spreading like a promise that tonight the Alpha King would finally fall. Thorn Blackwater crashed against the charred remains of an oak tree, ribs screaming, vision swimming red. 5 wolves circled him in the ruins of the silver-burned forest, their eyes gleaming with something worse than hatred. Triumph. This wasn't random. This was choreographed, timed, intimate, because these weren't rogues. They were his own. The forest reeked of betrayal. Thorn tasted it on his tongue, metallic and bitter, laced with the acrid burn of silver dust, still clinging to the air. His left shoulder was torn open, the wound deep enough that his wolf whimpered beneath his skin, struggling to heal. Silver poisoning slowed everything. Movement, thought, survival. He'd been lured here under the pretense of a border threat. A message delivered in his beta's handwriting, written in the clipped efficiency of pack protocol. Rogue sighting Sector 9. Immediate response required. He should have known. He had known. But arrogance was a blade that cut both ways, and Thorn had always believed his control over the pack was absolute. That loyalty was bred into their bones. That fear of him ran deeper than ambition. He'd been wrong. "Still breathing, Your Majesty." The voice came from his left. Decker Iron, one of his enforcers. A wolf Thorn had trained himself. Promoted, trusted. The word tasted like ash now. Thorn dragged his gaze up, forcing his spine straight, even though his body screamed in protest. His wolf snarled inside him, clawing for dominance, but the silver in his blood kept the shift at bay. He was trapped in this broken human form, vulnerable in ways an alpha should never be. "You think," his voice came out hoarse, shredded. He spat blood into the snow. "You think 5 of you is enough?" Decker smiled. It was the kind of smile that came easy to men who'd already made peace with violence. "We didn't need 5. We just needed you away from the pack, isolated, weakened." He gestured to the others, 4 wolves fanning out in a perfect kill formation. Practiced, cold. The rest is just insurance. Thorn recognized them all. Flint Cross, demolition specialist, who'd served 3 tours in Afghanistan before presenting as a shifter at 28. The man knew 100 ways to kill with household materials. Ash Remington, tracker, patient. The kind of wolf who'd watch a target for weeks, learning patterns, finding the perfect moment to strike. Ridge Caldwell, combat medic. He knew exactly where to cut to make a man bleed out in 90 seconds and exactly where to avoid if you wanted them to suffer longer. And Cade Crane, younger, hungrier. A wolf who'd been angling for higher ranks since the day he'd presented. But there was something different in Cade's eyes. Conflict, hesitation, weakness. Thorn's claws extended bone-white and sharp even in his human form. His eyes flared gold, the only part of his wolf he could still summon. "Who sent you?" "Does it matter?" Ash's voice was flat. Professional. "You'll be dead either way, and the pack will be better for it." "Better," Thorn's laugh was jagged glass. "You think murdering your alpha makes you heroes?" "We think," Decker said, stepping closer, "that you've been compromised, that your judgment is clouded, that the pack needs leadership that puts duty before sentiment." Thorn's mind raced through the implications. This wasn't just an assassination. This was a coup, organized, sanctioned by someone with enough authority to convince 5 trained warriors that killing their alpha was righteous. Only one wolf in the pack had that kind of influence. "Silas," Thorn breathed. Decker's smile widened. "Beta Graves sends his regards." The words hit harder than any physical blow. 20 years of brotherhood, fighting side by side, building this pack from fractured territories into the strongest force in the Northern Rockies. 20 years of trust, all of it a lie. The air thickened. Thorn's heartbeat slowed not from fear but from calculation. He was weighing his odds, 5 against 1, silver burning through his veins. No backup, no pack bond to call for help. They'd severed it the moment they decided to kill him. He was alone, and they knew it. Decker stepped closer, a silver blade glinting in his hand. Custom forged, designed specifically to kill an alpha. "Any last words, Thorn?" Thorn's lips curled into something that might have been a smile if it wasn't so vicious. "Yeah, you should have brought more wolves." Decker lunged, and that's when she arrived. No sound, no warning. One moment the forest was a graveyard of ash and vengeance. The next a shadow peeled away from the trees, silent, as death soft as smoke. The wolves didn't notice her, not at first, but Thorn did. Even through the haze of pain and blood loss, even with his vision fracturing at the edges, he felt her. A pulse. Sudden. Violent. It stopped his breath. His wolf, sluggish and wounded, suddenly surged to life, howling inside his chest with a recognition that burned hotter than the silver in his veins. Mate. No, impossible. Thorn didn't have a mate. He'd searched for decades. Waited. Hoped in the quiet, shameful way alphas never admitted. And he'd long since accepted that the moon goddess had deemed him unworthy. But this was undeniable. She moved like water through stone. Fluid. Inevitable. Her body was small, compact, built for speed rather than strength. Dark hair whipped around her face in the wind, and her eyes, quicksilver bright, feral, locked onto Decker with the kind of focus that came before a kill. She wore no pack colors, no markings, nothing that identified her as anything other than what the Whispers called her. The mute Omega who lived in the eastern woods. Thorn's chest tightened. He knew who she was. Everyone did. The broken girl who'd appeared on pack borders 15 years ago, tolerated but never welcomed, a ghost in their world. Forgotten, dismissed, invisible. Until now. Decker saw her half a second too late. She was already moving. Her first strike took him in the throat, not with claws, but with the heel of her palm. A brutal upward thrust that crushed his windpipe and sent him staggering back, choking. Before he could recover, she spun low, sweeping his legs out from under him. He hit the ground hard. She was on him in an instant, her knee driving into his chest, her hand wrapping around the silver blade he'd dropped. She didn't hesitate. The blade plunged into his shoulder. Not a killing blow, but close enough. Decker screamed. The other four wolves reacted as one, surging toward her in a coordinated attack. But she was faster. Impossibly faster. She rolled sideways, using Decker's body as a shield, and came up in a crouch, eyes tracking all four targets at once. Her breathing was controlled, calm, like she'd done this 1,000 times before. Thorn tried to push himself upright, but his body refused. He could only watch transfixed as this girl, this Omega, held off four trained enforcers without making a single sound. She fought like the forest itself had taught her, no formal technique, no pack strategy, just instinct raw and refined by survival. 15 years of scavenging old training manuals from pack garbage, Thorn realized with sudden clarity. 15 years practicing strikes against trees, perfecting balance on river stones. 15 years studying warriors from hiding, memorizing their patterns. She turned invisibility into her greatest weapon. They never knew she was learning. Flint lunged for her left side. She ducked under his claws, drove her elbow into his ribs, and used his momentum to throw him into ash. They collided in a tangle of limbs and snarls. Two left. Ridge and Cade came at her together, coordinated, trying to box her in. She feinted right, then exploded left, faster than Thorn thought possible. Her claws, small but lethally sharp, raked across Ridge's face. He howled, clutching his ruined eye. Cade hesitated. That hesitation cost him. She closed the distance in a heartbeat, and this time she didn't hold back. Her wolf surged forward, not fully shifting, but enough that her features sharpened, her strength doubled. She caught him by the throat and squeezed. Her eyes blazed mercury silver with something that looked like fury, or pain, or both. Cade went limp in her grip. Silence, the forest held its breath. 5 wolves lay scattered in the snow, wounded, broken, alive but barely. Decker was still choking on his own blood, trying to crawl away. The girl stood in the center of the carnage, breathing hard, her body coiled like she expected another attack. But her eyes, those impossible quicksilver eyes, were on Thorn. And for the first time in his life, Thorn Blackwater, the Alpha King, who commanded armies, who bent entire territories to his will, who had never bowed to anyone, felt something he didn't recognize. Awe. She crossed the distance between them slowly, warily, like she wasn't sure if he was friend or foe. Blood streaked her hands. Her clothes were torn, but she moved with a grace that made his wolf ache. When she reached him, she dropped to her knees in the snow, her eyes scanning his wounds with an intensity that bordered on frantic. Her hands hovered over his shoulder, trembling, and Thorn realized something that made his chest crack open. She was terrified, not of the fight, Not of the wolves she'd just destroyed, of him, of losing him. Why the word scraped out of Thorne's throat, rough and desperate. Why did you? She pressed two fingers to his lips. Silence. Her eyes, those impossible frost-touched silver eyes, held his. And in them, Thorne saw everything she couldn't say. Because you belong with me. Because I've always known you. Because the bond between us is older than words. His hand lifted, shaking, and cupped on her face. She flinched just barely but didn't pull away. Her skin was soft, warm, real. Who are you? He whispered. She didn't answer, couldn't answer, but her fingers curled into his shirt, holding on like he was the only thing keeping her tethered to this world. And maybe he was, because as the snow began to fall again, as the forest settled back into its eerie quiet, Thorne felt the mate bond snap into place with a violence that stole his breath. Recognition carved into DNA, certainty beyond reason. She belonged with him. She'd always belonged with him. And someone had made sure he'd never know it. Her name was Vesper, not that anyone had spoken it in years. In the pack, she was simply the mute, or that broken omega, or more often, nothing at all. Invisibility was a language she'd learned to speak fluently. It kept her safe, kept her alive, kept her from the kind of attention that left scars deeper than claws could make. But Thorne didn't know any of this yet. All he knew was that his mate, the word still felt impossible, was kneeling in blood-stained snow, her hands pressed against his wounds with a gentleness that contradicted the violence she'd just unleashed. Her touch was careful, clinical almost, like she'd done this before, like she'd spent years learning how to heal in silence. She pulled back slightly and her lips moved, forming words carefully. No sound, just shape and breath. You need to shift. Thorne's wolf stirred, responding to her command in a way that should have been impossible. Omegas didn't command alphas. The hierarchy didn't work that way. But the mate bond didn't care about hierarchy. And his wolf recognized her authority on a level that transcended rank. Mate, mate, mate. Can't, Thorne gritted out. Silver. Too much silver. Her eyes darkened, not with fear but with something harder. Determination. She glanced back at the groaning wolves scattered across the clearing, her expression calculating. Then she made a decision. She bit her own wrist. What are you, Thorne started, but she was already pressing the bleeding wound to his lips. Her blood hit his tongue and everything ignited. It wasn't just blood, it was power, ancient, wild, wrong in all the ways that mattered and right in all the ways that didn't. His wolf roared to life, shoving against the silver's hold with renewed strength. The poison in his veins didn't disappear. It couldn't, not completely, but it retreated, pushed back by whatever the hell was in her bloodline. Thorne's eyes snapped to hers, gold meeting silver. Questions piled up like bodies. What are you? But she was already pulling away, wrapping her wrist in a strip torn from her shirt. She stood swaying slightly, and Thorne realized with a jolt that whatever she'd just done had cost her. Her face was pale, her breathing shallow. Don't, he tried to stand, but his legs wouldn't cooperate yet. The silver was retreating but slowly. You need to, a snarl cut through the air. Decker had recovered enough to shift partially at least. His wolf form was twisted wrong, one shoulder hanging at an unnatural angle from where Vesper had stabbed him. But his eyes burned with murderous intent, fixed on her like she was the only thing standing between him and survival, which Thorne supposed she was. Decker spat, his voice distorted by the partial shift. Do you have any idea what you've done? Vesper said nothing. Of course she didn't. But her body shifted into a fighting stance, weight balanced, ready. We were saving the pack from him, Decker gestured wildly at Thorne. He's been compromised, playing alpha while the rest of us starve under his weak leadership. You just condemned us all to, Vesper moved. One moment she was 10 feet away. The next her hand was wrapped around Decker's throat, claws extended just enough to draw blood. Her face was inches from his, and though she made no sound, the fury radiating off her was deafening. Decker's eyes widened. You can't, she squeezed. Stop. Thorne's voice cracked like a whip, alpha command bleeding into every syllable. It took everything he had to force the word out with enough power to cut through the mate bond's chaos. Don't kill him, not yet. Vesper's head turned slowly, her moonlit gaze meeting his. For a heartbeat, Thorn wondered if she'd obey, if the bond was strong enough to override whatever rage was burning inside her. Then deliberately, she opened her hand. Decker collapsed, gasping. She walked back to Thorn, each step measured, and knelt beside him again. This time when she touched him, her hands were shaking. Thorn caught her wrist gently. "Who did this to you?" She didn't answer, couldn't answer. But her eyes slid away from his toward the forest's edge where the pack territory began. Where home was supposed to be, and Thorn understood. Someone in the pack had broken her. Someone had stolen her voice, her place, her life. And the wolves who'd just tried to kill him, they were connected to it. He'd bet his throne on it. "We need to move," he said quietly, forcing strength into his voice, even though his body screamed in protest. "More will come. They'll have heard the fight." Vesper nodded once. Then she did something that stopped Thorn's heart. She offered him her hand, not as a subject to an alpha, not as a pack member to a king, as an equal. Thorn stared at her outstretched palm, small, scarred, still stained with blood, and felt something fundamental shift inside him. All his life he'd been surrounded by wolves who wanted something from him. Power, protection, permission. No one had ever just offered. He took her hand. The moment their skin connected, the mate bond sang. Not the gentle warmth of stories and legends. An electric current through bone gravity shifting the world and rearranging itself around this single point of contact. Vesper's breath hitched. Her eyes went wide, silver, bleeding into gold at the edges. And Thorn knew she felt it too. The recognition, the belonging, the terrifying certainty that they were meant to burn together. But there was something else in her expression. Something that looked like grief. "What is it?" Thorn whispered. "What aren't you telling me?" She shook her head, pulling him to his feet with surprising strength. He swayed, still weak, but her arm wrapped around his waist, steadying him. For an Omega, she was remarkably solid, grounded. "Wrong," his alpha instincts whispered. "She's too strong, too fast, too Thorn." The voice came from the trees, familiar, warm, edged with concern that sounded almost genuine. Thorn's entire body went rigid. Slowly he turned. Silas Graves stepped into the clearing, flanked by 15 wolves in full combat gear. His beta, his second in command, the man Thorn had trusted with his life for 20 years, the man whose handwriting had been on the message that lured him here. "Thank the moon goddess," Silas said, his eyes scanning the carnage with practiced efficiency. "When you didn't return, I feared the worst. I came as soon as—" He stopped. His gaze landed on Vesper. Something flickered across his face, too fast for Thorn to read. "Is that the mute Omega?" Thorn felt Vesper stiffen against him. Her hand clenched in his shirt, and he realized with a shock that she was afraid. Not of the beta, of what the beta knew. "She saved my life," Thorn said, carefully watching Silas's reaction. How fortunate. Silas's smile was perfect, practiced, the same smile he'd worn for 20 years of loyal service. "Though I'm surprised she even knew you were here. The Omega barely leaves the eastern woods." "Neither did Decker and his friends," Thorn said softly. "Until tonight." The clearing went silent. Silas's expression didn't change, but his scent did. Just barely. Just enough for an alpha to catch. Guilt, or maybe calculation. "You think I had something to do with this?" Silas's voice was still warm, still concerned, but there was an edge now, sharp as silver. "Thorn, I've been your beta since we were cubs. I've bled for this pack. For you." "I know." Thorn's voice was quiet, dangerous. "That's what makes this so much worse." The wolves behind Silas shifted hands, moving toward weapons. Not overtly threatening, not yet. But the message was clear. Choose your next words carefully, Alpha. Vesper moved, then subtle, barely noticeable, positioning herself between Thorn and Silas. Her body was tense, ready to fight, even though she had to be exhausted. Even though she was outnumbered 15-1. She'd do it anyway, Thorn realized with a jolt. She'd die for me. The mate bond pulsed fierce and possessive, and Thorn's wolf surged forward with a protectiveness that bordered on feral. His hand found her shoulder, pulling her gently but firmly against his side. "I've got this," he told her quietly, though he knew she couldn't respond. She didn't move. Silas's eyes tracked the interaction with laser focus. You've bonded with her. It wasn't a question. Yes. No point denying it. The mate bond was visible to anyone with eyes, the way they stood together. The synchronization of their breathing, the possessive curl of Thorn's hand on her shoulder. Interesting. Silas tilted his head. Did she tell you why she can't speak? Thorn's eyes narrowed. No. Silas took a step forward. The wolves behind him mirrored the movement. Perhaps you should understand the truth before you decide to trust her with your life. I already do. Even if she's the reason you were attacked on tonight, the words hung in the air like poison. Thorn felt Vesper flinch against him, and rage, white-hot and absolute, flooded his system. Explain, now. Silas's smile widened. The mute Omega has been living on Pac lands for 15 years. 15 years, Thorn. And in all that time, has anyone questioned why? Why we allow a broken, useless Omega to drain resources? Why she's permitted to stay when she contributes nothing? Get to the point. She's bait. Silas's voice dropped. Intimate and cruel. A trap set 15 years ago by the wolves who want you dead. They knew you'd find her eventually, knew the mate bond would blind you. And when you finally let your guard down, he gestured to the bodies in the snow. Well, you see how that worked out. Thorn's world tilted. No. He looked down at Vesper, at her white face, her wide eyes, her trembling hands, and saw something that made his chest crack open. Truth, not the truth Silas was selling, but truth nonetheless. She had been keeping secrets. He could see it in every line of her body, in the way she couldn't meet his eyes. Is it true? He asked quietly. She shook her head violently, then paused, nodded slightly, then made a gesture that was neither yes nor no, but something more complicated. Partially true, but not how you think. Please believe me, please. She can't even defend herself, Silas said softly. How convenient. Thorn's claws extended bone-white and lethal. His wolf was snarling, torn between the mate bond's certainty and the beta's logic. If you're lying to me, why would I lie? Silas spread his hands. Picture of innocence. I've served you faithfully for 20 years. She's been silent for 15. Which one of us has earned your trust? It was a fair question. It was also a trap, because Thorn could feel the mate bond thrumming in his chest, absolute and unshakable. Could feel his wolf's certainty that Vesper belonged with him as surely as his own heartbeat. But 20 years of brotherhood, of loyalty, of shared blood and battle, that wasn't nothing either. Come back to Pac grounds, Silas said gently. We'll sort this out properly. With the council, with witnesses. The Omega will have a chance to explain herself. His eyes glinted, in whatever way she can. Thorn's jaw clenched. If he refused, if he ran with Vesper into the wilderness, he'd look guilty, weak, like a lovesick alpha who'd abandon his pack for a mate bond. The council would call a vote. Silas would take his throne before sunrise. But if he went back, he'd be walking into a nest of vipers with a mate who couldn't speak her own defense. Vesper tugged on his shirt. Urgent. When he looked down, she was shaking her head frantically, her lips forming silent words. Trap. Don't go. Please. She seems worried, Silas observed. Almost like she knows what will happen if we investigate too closely. Or, Thorn said coldly, she knows that you're planning to kill us both the moment we're separated. Silas's mask finally slipped. Just for a second. Just long enough for Thorn to see the calculation underneath. The ambition. The cold, patient hunger of a man who'd been waiting 20 years for his moment. You wound me, Alpha. But Silas's hand had moved to his weapon. So had the others. I'm only trying to protect the pack from a potential threat. The only threat here, Thorn said softly, is you. The forest held its breath. 15 wolves on one side, 2 on the other. 1 wounded, 1 silent. The math was simple. They were going to die here, unless Vesper moved. Not toward the enemy, toward Thorn. She rose on her toes, her hand cupping his face, and pressed her forehead to his. The mate bond erupted, flooding his system with strength that shouldn't have been possible, with power that tasted like moonlight and ancient magic and something other. His wounds began to heal. Fast. Too fast. What? Thorn started. She pressed her finger to his lips again. Trust me. And then she sang. No, not singing, but something happened. The air around them began to shimmer, reality bending like light through water. The wolves advancing on them suddenly stopped confused, their eyes glazing over like they'd forgotten why they were here. Silas alone seemed unaffected, his eyes widened in shock. That's impossible. The binding should have. Vesper's eyes blazed pure silver, and the forest answered her call. The trees moved, not swaying in wind, not rustling with animal passage. Moving. Roots erupted from the frozen ground like ancient serpents coiling around the legs of Silas's wolves. Branches whipped down from above, striking with precision that spoke of intelligence, of purpose. The forest itself had become a weapon, and Vesper stood at its center, silent, terrible, awake. Thorn's breath caught. He'd heard legends, whispers passed down through generations about wolves who could speak to the earth itself. Moon singers, they were called, blessed or cursed by the moon goddess, with power that transcended the normal hierarchy of pack life. They'd all been killed centuries ago, or so the stories claimed. Run, Vesper's lips formed the word, though no sound emerged. But Thorn felt it through the bond. Urgent, desperate. Please, she was buying him time. Sacrificing herself so he could escape. Like hell. Thorn's wolf surged forward, and this time, thanks to whatever magic she'd poured into him, the shift came easy. His bones cracked and reformed. Fur rippled across his skin, and within heartbeats, he stood on 4 legs. Massive, furious, alpha. He positioned himself beside her. I don't run. She turned to him, her molten starlight eyes wide with shock. And something else. Something that looked dangerously close to hope. But there was no time to explore it. Silas had recovered from his initial surprise, and his voice cut through the chaos like a blade. Restrain them. The Omega is using forbidden magic. She's in violation of pack law. 2 wolves broke free from the forest's hold, shifting mid-leap jaws, snapping toward Vesper's throat. Thorn met them head on. The impact was brutal. Teeth and claws and the copper tang of blood. His wolf was bigger, stronger, fueled by silver-laced rage and the primal need to protect his mate. He caught the first wolf by the scruff and threw him into a tree, hard enough to crack wood. The second managed to rake claws across his shoulder before Thorn's jaws closed around his foreleg. Crushing bone. Behind him, Vesper fought her own battle. She hadn't shifted, couldn't maybe or wouldn't, but she moved through the attacking wolves like water through stone. The forest obeyed her every gesture. Vines snaring limbs, branches striking faces. She was the conductor of a deadly symphony. And the music was violence. But she was tiring. Thorn could feel it through the bond. Whatever power she was channeling, it was draining her fast. Her movements were slowing. Her breathing ragged. Blood trickled from her nose. We can't win this, his wolf growled. Not here. Not like this. Silas seemed to reach the same conclusion. Enough. His alpha command rolled through the clearing, forcing his wolves to heel even as the forest fought against them. His eyes locked on Thorn, calculating. You're protecting an abomination, Thorn, a threat to everything we've built. Thorn shifted back to human form, blood streaming from a dozen wounds but standing tall. The only threat here is you, Beta. Is it? Silas's smile was cold. Then let's test that theory. Come back to pack grounds. Let the council judge. If she's innocent, if you're right about me, then you have nothing to fear. Except the dozen assassins you'll have waiting. Then stay here, Silas shrugged. Hide in the forest with your cursed mate. Abandon your pack, your throne, everything you've built. He paused, letting the words sink in. But know that by sunrise I'll have convinced the council that you've been compromised, that the Omega has bewitched you, and by tomorrow night there will be a new Alpha King. It was checkmate, and they both knew it. If Thorn ran, he lost everything. If he stayed and fought, Vesper would be killed for using forbidden magic. And if he went back to face the council, Vesper's hand found his. Squeezing once. When he looked down, she was shaking her head. Tears streaked her face, but her expression was resolute. Her lips moved. Let me go. Save yourself. Please. No, the word came out harsh, absolute. Thorn pulled her against his chest, feeling her heartbeat race against his. We face this together. How touching. Silas's voice dripped with mockery. The great Alpha King brought to his knees by an Omega who can't even speak her own defense. Your father would be ashamed. Thorn's claws extended. My father was a tyrant who ruled through fear. I'm not him. No, Silas agreed softly. You're worse. You're weak, controlled by a mate bond to a creature that shouldn't exist. And that weakness will destroy this pack. Before Thorn could respond, Vesper stepped forward. Her eyes blazed with that eerie silver light, and for the first time since the fight began, Thorn felt genuine fear. Not of her, for her, because whatever she was about to do would reveal the full extent of her power, and there would be no taking it back. No more hiding, no more pretending to be just another broken Omega. She raised her hands and the forest went silent. Not quiet, silent, as if every living thing within a mile had stopped breathing, waiting for her command. Then she opened her mouth. No sound emerged, but Thorn felt something ripple through the air. Invisible, ancient, a frequency that bypassed ears entirely and went straight to the soul. Silas's face went white. No, that's impossible. The binding should have. Vesper's eyes met Thorn's, and in them he saw the truth she'd been hiding for 15 years. Not with words, with pure intention channeled through the bond. I'm not cursed, I'm sealed. And if I break the seal, the real war begins. Around them, the forest began to glow. Soft at first, then brighter. Silver light bleeding from every leaf and root. Ancient magic waking from a long sleep. And Thorn understood with sudden, terrible clarity. She hadn't lost her voice. She'd given it up willingly, to keep something far more dangerous locked away. Something that lived inside her, something that, if released, would change everything. Vesper's lips moved, and though no sound came out, Thorn heard her through the bond, clear as a bell, devastating as a blade. I was never meant to save you tonight. I was meant to kill you. The moment we bonded, the seal would break. And what comes after? Everyone dies. Her tears fell faster now. I'm so sorry. The silver light intensified, spreading from her body like wings. Silas's wolves scattered howling in terror. Even Silas himself took a step back, his confident mask finally cracking. Stop her, he screamed. Stop her before it's too late. But it was already too late. The seal shattered. The world didn't end, not immediately. But Thorn felt the shift, like reality had tilted on its axis, rearranging itself around the small, trembling woman in his arms. The silver light that had exploded from Vesper's body retreated inward, condensing, coiling beneath her skin like a living thing. When she opened her eyes, they were no longer silver. They were white, pupilless, ancient. And then she spoke. Run. Her voice. After 15 years of silence, her voice was like broken glass, sharp, painful, beautiful. It scraped across Thorn's senses with the force of a physical blow, and his wolf whimpered in response, torn between awe and terror. Vesper, he started. Run. This time the command carried power that made his bones vibrate. Alpha power. No, something beyond alpha. Something that predated pack hierarchies and territorial bonds. Something primal. Silas's wolves didn't need to be told twice. They scattered into the forest like leaves before a storm, their terrified howls echoing through the trees. Even Silas himself stumbled backward, his face ashen, all pretense of control shattered. You brought this on yourself, he spat at Thorn. You bonded with a vessel. Do you have any idea what you've unleashed? Thorn's arm tightened around Vesper, around this stranger wearing his mate's face. Explain, now. She's not a moon singer. Silas's laugh was jagged, broken. She's something the moon goddess herself sealed away. A living prison for. Vesper's hand shot out and Silas's words died in his throat. Literally. His mouth moved, but no sound emerged. She'd stolen his voice the same way hers had been stolen. Poetic Thorn's wolf observed darkly. Don't? Vesper's voice was steadier now, though still rough with disuse. She turned to face Thorn fully, and he saw the grief etched into every line of her face. Don't let him tell you. Please, let me. She faltered, tears streaming down her cheeks. Let me explain before you hate me. I could never hate you. You don't know what I am. Then tell me. Thorn cupped her face, forcing her to meet his eyes. Whatever it is, we face it together. I meant what I said. She laughed, a splintered, bitter sound. You bonded with me to save out your life. Now that bond might be what destroys you. Her hand covered his trembling. I'm a vessel thorn, a living seal created by the moon goddess 3 centuries ago to contain something that nearly destroyed all shifter kind. The words hung between them, heavy as stone. What kind of something? Thorn asked quietly. A god. Her voice dropped to a whisper, or what's left of one. The shadow wolf, the first shifter born from the goddess's rage and sorrow. He was supposed to be her gift to the world. Instead, he became her greatest mistake. She pulled away from Thorn, wrapping her arms around herself. He wanted to rule over all wolves, to make them slaves to his will. When the goddess tried to stop him, he nearly killed her. Thorn's blood ran cold. So she sealed him, inside a human vessel, inside my bloodline. Vesper's eyes closed. For 300 years, the women in my family have carried him. We're born mute, our voices stolen at birth to prevent the seal from weakening. We live in isolation, guarded by packs who know what we are. Her voice cracked. We exist to suffer so others can be free. That's barbaric, Thorn growled. That's necessary. Her eyes snapped open, fierce despite the tears. Every time we speak, the seal cracks. Every word we utter gives him more power. And if we form a mate bond, she touched his chest right over his heart. The bond is the final key. It gives him access to alpha power, to pack connections, to everything he needs to break free completely. Oh yeah, understanding crashed over Thorn like a wave. That's why you saved me. Not because of the bond, because you were trying to prevent it from forming. I failed. Her voice broke. The moment I touched you, the moment I tasted your blood, I felt it snap into place. And I was too selfish to stop it. Too desperate for connection, for belonging, to do what I should have done 15 years ago. She paused. Which was die. She said it so simply, like she was discussing the weather. I should have died before reaching maturity, before the bond could form. That's what every vessel before me did. Sacrifice ourselves before we could become a threat. Rage, white-hot, and absolute flooded Thorn's system. Who told you that? Who made you believe your life was worth less than everyone? Vesper pulled away from him, wrapping her arms tighter. My mother, the pack elders, the moon priestess who blessed my birth and cursed my existence in the same breath. Her voice turned hollow. They were right, Thorn. I've been a coward, clinging to life when I should have. Stop. Thorn's alpha command cut through her self-loathing like a blade. I don't care what they told you. I don't care what some ancient prophecy says. You belong with me, and I will burn this world to ash before I let anyone God and or otherwise take you from me. She stared at him, shock written across her face. You don't understand. The Shadow Wolf is awake now. He's inside me, growing stronger with every moment we're bonded. Eventually, he'll take control. He'll use me to destroy everything you love. Then we find a way to stop him. There is no way. The only solution is to... Don't. Thorn's voice went deadly soft. Don't you dare say it. But he could see it in her eyes, the resignation, the acceptance. She was planning to die, to break the mate bond and take the Shadow Wolf with her over his dead body. How long, he asked. How long do we have before he takes control? Vesper hesitated. Hours, maybe a day. Speaking accelerated the process. The more I use my voice, the faster he wakes. Then we find the moon priestess. We find whoever sealed him in the first place, and we make them undo it. They're all dead, Thorn. The knowledge died with them. Then we improvise. He pulled her close again, breathing in her scent. Wild roses in winter, frost and home. I didn't wait my entire life to find you, just to lose you to some dead god's ambition. She melted against him, and for a moment they stood in the quiet forest, two fractured souls clinging to each other, while the world prepared to end. I love you, she whispered against his chest. I've loved you since the day I first saw you 15 years ago. I was just an adolescent, but I knew you were mine. Thorn's heart shattered and reformed. Then we fight, together. Behind them, Silas had recovered enough to gesture frantically at his throat, demanding his voice back. Vesper flicked her wrist, and his voice returned with a gasp. You're both insane, Silas rasped. The pack will never accept this. They'll hunt you down before you can let them try. Thorn's eyes flashed gold. Anyone who comes for her goes through me. Then you've signed your own death warrant. Silas backed toward the trees, and when the Shadow Wolf breaks free, when he slaughters everyone you've sworn to protect, their blood will be on your hands. He vanished into the darkness. Vesper sagged against Thorn. He's right. This is suicide. Maybe. Thorn tilted her chin up, forcing her to meet his eyes. But I'd rather die fighting beside you than live without you. She kissed him then, desperate, fierce, tasting of salt and sorrow and stolen moments. And somewhere deep inside her, something ancient stirred. Soon a voice like grinding stone whispered, "Soon, little wolf, you'll be mine." They ran, not in retreat, in strategy. Vesper led the way, moving through the forest with the confidence of someone who'd spent 15 years mapping every inch of it. Thorn followed close behind his wolf, still recovering from the silver but functional enough. "Where are we going?" he asked. She didn't answer immediately. Couldn't waste the energy speaking when every word gave the Shadow Wolf more power. But she pointed east toward the oldest part of the territory, where the trees grew so thick that sunlight barely penetrated, where the ground was carpeted with centuries of fallen needles, where ancient things slept. They moved in silence for nearly an hour before Vesper finally stopped at what looked like nothing more than a tangle of dead vines and exposed roots. She pulled the vines aside, revealing a narrow entrance into the earth. Thorn's wolf recoiled instinctively. Old magic. Powerful magic. "It's warded," he said. "I can feel it." Vesper nodded and placed her hand on the stone threshold. The ward shimmered and dissolved at her touch, recognizing something in her bloodline. "He's helping me," she said softly, her voice barely audible. "The Shadow Wolf, he wants us to find whatever's inside." That should have terrified Thorn. Instead, it gave him hope. If the Shadow Wolf wanted them here, maybe there was something he feared, some weakness they could exploit. They descended into darkness. The passage opened into a chamber that shouldn't exist. Too large, too perfectly carved, lit by crystals that glowed with soft lunar light, and covering every wall, floor to ceiling, were inscriptions, ancient script that made Thorn's eyes water to look at directly. "It's a history," Vesper breathed, moving toward the nearest wall. Her fingers traced the symbols, and as she touched them, they began to glow. The true history of the Shadow Wolf, of what really happened. "Tell me," Thorn said. She read silently for a long moment, her expression shifting from concentration to shock to something that looked like heartbreak. "It's not what they told me, what they told any of us." Her voice cracked. The Shadow Wolf wasn't evil. He was betrayed. The inscriptions showed images. A massive wolf with eyes like stars standing beside a radiant female figure. They looked happy. The moon goddess created him as her mate, her equal. He was supposed to rule beside her, to guide shifter kind together. Vesper's finger moved to another section. But the other gods were jealous. They couldn't stand that she'd chosen a mortal-born creature over them. So they poisoned her mind, whispered lies about his ambition. His hunger for power made her believe he wanted to overthrow her. She touched a particularly violent image, the goddess's hand plunging into the Shadow Wolf's chest. And when she confronted him, when he tried to explain, her voice broke. She ripped out his heart, literally tore it from his body and sealed it away. "But he survived," Thorn said quietly, "because she couldn't kill him. Even corrupted by lies, even believing he'd betrayed her, she loved him." Vesper's tears fell freely now. So instead of death, she gave him something worse. She scattered his essence across time, sealing pieces of him in human vessels, forcing him to live fractured, incomplete, watching centuries pass while she mourned what she destroyed. The chamber fell silent except for the soft drip of water somewhere in the darkness. "That's not sealing a monster," Thorn said finally. "That's torture." "Yes," Vesper turned to face him. "And my family, every vessel before me, we've been his prison, keeping him fragmented, in agony, for 300 years. Her voice rose anguished. "We were told we were heroes, that we were protecting the world, but we were just perpetuating the goddess's mistake, her crime." A new voice filled the chamber, deep, resonant, ancient. Finally, someone who understands. The temperature dropped, frost spread across the stones beneath their feet, and standing in the center of the chamber, coalescing from shadow and silver light, was him, the Shadow Wolf. He was massive, larger than any natural wolf, his fur the color of midnight, his eyes twin moons of silver white. But it was his expression that stopped Thorn's heart. He looked tired, sad, more broken than dangerous. "You're not possessing her," Thorn said quietly, understanding clicking into place. "I could." The Shadow Wolf's gaze found Vesper. "The bond weakened the seal enough. But I'm done stealing, done forcing. I spent 3 centuries trapped because the goddess wouldn't trust me. I won't make the same mistake." "Then what do you want?" Vesper whispered. "My heart. Simple, direct. It's still hidden somewhere in this world. Find it, return it to me, and I'll give you both something the goddess never gave me." "What?" Thorn asked. "A choice." The Shadow Wolf moved closer, and Thorn noticed he limped, one leg dragging, wounded in a way that transcended physical form. "If you return my heart, I can separate from your bloodline completely, free every future vessel from this curse." Hope flared in Vesper's chest. But it will break the mate bond between you." The Shadow Wolf's eyes held infinite sorrow. "Completely. Permanently. The bond is tied to the seal. It's part of the magic that keeps me fractured. When I'm whole again, when I'm free, the bond dissolves." The world stopped. "What?" Thorn's voice came out strangled. "You'll be strangers." The Shadow Wolf looked at Vesper. "No pull, no recognition, no love that transcends reason. I've watched the goddess try to love me again for centuries, and the betrayal carved too deep. Once the bond breaks, once the magic is gone, so is the bridge that connected you." "No." The word ripped from Thorn's throat. "There has to be another way." "There isn't." The Shadow Wolf's voice was heavy with ancient grief. "I've had 300 years to examine every angle of this prison." He looked at Vesper. "Save me and lose each other, or keep your bond and condemn every daughter in your line to the same fate you've suffered." Vesper's hand found Thorn squeezing so hard it hurt. "How long do we have to decide? The pack is coming." The Shadow Wolf began to fade. "Your beta has convinced them you're compromised. They'll be here by dawn with silver chains and execution orders." His voice grew distant. "You have until sunrise to find my heart, or stay and die together. Either way." He vanished. Thorn pulled Vesper against him, breathing hard. "We don't have to do this. We can run, hide, find another way." "There is no other way." Her voice was steady despite the tears. "You heard him." "I don't care." Thorn cupped her face. "I don't care if 100 future daughters suffer. I don't care if I'm selfish. I just found you. I'm not losing you. And I'm not condemning innocence to my fate." She kissed him. Soft, devastating. "We find the heart. We free him. And we pray that what we feel is real enough to survive without the bond." "Vesper, please." She pressed her forehead to his. "Let me be brave. Just this once. Let me choose to be a hero instead of a victim." Thorn wanted to argue, wanted to drag her into the wilderness and damn the consequences. But he saw the determination in her eyes, the strength that had always been there buried under years of silence and shame. She'd made her choice. Now he had to make his. "Where's the heart?" His voice was hollow. Vesper turned back to the inscriptions, scanning frantically. "It says..." She stopped. "Oh no." "What?" "It's in pack territory, hidden in the Alpha's den." She looked at him, her laugh bitter. "In your den, Thorn. Your father's vault. It's been under your protection this whole time." Of course it had. Because fate was cruel, the Alpha's den was a fortress. 20 guards, silver-reinforced doors, wards that would alert the entire pack the moment anyone unauthorized crossed the threshold. And somewhere inside, buried beneath 3 centuries of ignorance, was a god's stolen heart. "This is insane," Thorn muttered, crouched in the shadows with Vesper at his side. "Even if we get past the guards, even if we find the heart, Silas will have the entire pack hunting us before we can get out. Then we move fast." Vesper's voice was steadier now, though Thorn could feel her fear through the bond, could taste it like copper on his tongue. The inscriptions showed where it's hidden. Your father's personal vault. The one even you're not supposed to access. Thorn's jaw clenched. His father had been paranoid, secretive, obsessed with power. If he'd known about the Shadow Wolf's heart, he was part of it, Thorn said suddenly. The conspiracy to keep the Shadow Wolf sealed. That's why Silas knew. Why the Beta Line has always been involved. Guardians, Vesper corrected softly. Jailers. And now we're breaking their prisoner free. The weight of what they were about to do settled over Thorn like a shroud. He wasn't just betraying his beta, he was overturning centuries of pack law, defying the moon goddess herself. For a woman he'd known for less than a day, a woman he'd lose the moment they succeeded. I can do this alone, Vesper whispered, reading his hesitation. You don't have to, Ty, don't. Thorn pulled her close, breathing in her scent one more time. We do this together, or not at all. She kissed him then, desperate, fierce, like she was trying to memorize the taste of him. And maybe she was, because in a few hours they'd be strangers. I'll remember, she whispered against his lips, even without the bond. I'll remember this. Remember you. A howl split the night. They'd been found. Go! Thorn shoved her toward the den entrance. I'll hold them off. No, she grabbed his arm, silver light already gathering in her palms. We fight together. If you die, this was all for nothing. If you died, I don't want to survive. Her voice cracked with power, with emotion, with the absolute certainty of the mate bond. Please don't make me lose you before I have to. Wolves poured from the tree line, dozens of them, led by Silas with silver chains in his hands and murder in his eyes. Behind him, Thorn recognized council members, enforcers, wolves he'd trained and fought beside for years, all here to kill him. Stand down, Thorn. Silas's voice carried alpha command borrowed from the council's authority. You're under arrest for treason, for consorting with a forbidden vessel, for endangering the pack. The pack is built on lies. Thorn roared back, his own alpha power crackling through the air, on torture and suffering and a goddess's mistake. Doesn't matter, Silas's smile was cold. The council has voted. You're stripped of rank, stripped of title. And he pointed at Vesper with barely concealed hatred. She dies tonight, along with the abomination inside her. Vesper stepped forward and the forest responded. Trees groaned. Roots erupted. But her power was weaker now. Thorn could feel it through the bond. The Shadow Wolf was pulling back, conserving energy, letting them fail. He wants us captured, Thorn realized with dawning horror. He wants the pack to bring us into the den, because once we're inside, it's a trap, Vesper hissed. He's been planning this, using us to get inside the vault where his heart is. Then we spring it. Her eyes blazed with determination. Better us than some innocent guard who opens it accidentally. You'll die. We're already dying. She squeezed his hand. At least this way someone gets free. The wolves attacked as one. Thorn met them in a blur of fur and fury. His alpha form was massive and terrible. He was wounded, exhausted, running on nothing but desperation and love. But he was still the Alpha King, still the most dangerous wolf in the territory. He took down 3 before the silver nets caught him. Vesper screamed, her voice raw and powerful enough to shatter eardrums, and the wolves attacking her collapsed, blood streaming from their ears. But there were too many, too coordinated, silver chains wrapped around her wrists, her throat, burning her skin where they touched. Thorn thrashed in the nets, watching helplessly as Silas approached Vesper with a blade designed specifically to kill vessels, to pierce the seal and destroy both her and the Shadow Wolf in one strike. Should have done this 15 years ago, Silas murmured, raising the blade. Should have killed you when you first arrived on our borders. A mute little girl with cursed blood. But Silas wasn't looking at Vesper with pure hatred. There was something else in his eyes. Conflict, genuine belief. But the council wouldn't allow it, Silas continued almost to himself. You were too young. They said vessels must reach maturity before execution, some ancient law about ensuring the Shadow Wolf is fully transferred before destroying the host. So I watched you, waited, 15 years knowing that the moment you turned 30, I could finally end this. He drove the blade down. Vesper didn't flinch, didn't fight. She looked at Thorn and her lips formed 3 words. I love you. The blade struck. and shattered, not against her skin, against the silver light that erupted from her chest, expanding outward in a wave that threw Silas back 20 feet. The chains around her melted. The nets holding Thorn disintegrated. And standing between them, fully manifested for the first time in 300 years, was the Shadow Wolf. But he wasn't alone. Behind him, translucent and shimmering with divine light, stood the moon goddess herself. She looked exactly like the inscriptions. Radiant, beautiful, terrible. And when she spoke, every wolf present fell to their knees. Enough. Her voice was creation and destruction, love and judgment. I have watched this cycle repeat for 3 centuries, watched innocence suffer for my mistake, for my pride. Her eyes silver like vespers, like the shadow wolves landed on Silas. And I have watched wolves twist my grief into a cage, my punishment into torture. Your grace, Silas started. Silence. The word obliterated sound itself. You do not speak to me of duty when you have perverted everything I intended. You do not speak to me of protection when you have caused more suffering than the crime you claim to prevent. She turned to the shadow wolf, and the centuries of pain between them was visible, palpable, devastating. I was wrong, she whispered. The shadow wolf's massive head lowered. Then let me go. Let me die properly. Let this end. No, the goddess moved closer, and Thorn saw tears streaming down her divine face. There is another way, but it requires sacrifice. Her gaze fell on Thorn and Vesper. From both of you. The moon goddess's presence was suffocating. Divine power pressed down on every wolf present, forcing them into submission. Even Thorn Alphaking, strongest of his generation, could barely lift his head under the weight of her attention. Only Vesper stood tall, trembling but unbowed. You, the goddess, said softly, approaching her. You carry my greatest shame, my deepest regret, and you have endured it with more grace than I ever showed him. I didn't have a choice. Vesper's voice was hoarse but steady. No, you didn't. The goddess's hand reached out, hovering over Vesper's heart. But you have one now, and so do I. The shadow wolf growled low, not threatening but warning. Don't toy with her. If you plan to kill me, just do it. Don't make her hope. I'm not going to kill you. The goddess finally met his eyes fully, and the love their ancient cleaved undeniable made Thorn's chest ache. I'm going to give you what I should have given you 300 years ago, a chance to choose your own fate. She turned back to Thorn and Vesper. The heart can be returned. The seal can be broken, but he cannot exist in this world as he once did. Too much time has passed. Too much damage has been done to his essence. Understanding crashed over Vesper like ice water. You want me to bond with him? Permanently. Yes, but not as captor and captive. As equals. He would have a body again. A life. But it would be intertwined with yours. You would share thoughts, emotions, power. Neither dominant, neither submissive. True symbiosis. And the mate bond, Thorn's voice came out strangled. With me, the goddess's eyes filled with sorrow, would break completely. The magic cannot sustain both bonds. You would become strangers to each other. Just as the shadow wolf warned. The forest held its breath. Vesper looked at Thorn, and in her eyes he saw everything they'd never have. Morning hunts together, lazy afternoons tangled in each other, cubs with her silver eyes and his wild heart, a lifetime of belonging to each other, all of it vanishing like smoke. There has to be another way, Thorn said desperately. Some other sacrifice. Take my alpha power, take my throne. Take my life if you need to, but don't take her. Your life is not yours to give, the goddess said gently. Your pack needs you, and this is not about payment or punishment. It's about choice. She looked at Vesper. Her choice. Don't. Thorn grabbed Vesper's hand, pulling her against him. Please, we'll find another solution. There isn't one. Vesper's voice broke. You know there isn't. I don't care. The words ripped from somewhere primal in Thorn's chest. I've spent my whole life doing what's right for the pack, sacrificing for the greater good. Just this once, let me be selfish. Let me choose you. And condemn every daughter born to my bloodline. Tears streaked her face. Condemn him to another 300 years of torture. Thorn, I can't. I won't. Then I'll find a way to make you remember. Thorn cupped her face, memorizing every detail. After the bond breaks, I'll court you again. I'll make you fall in love with me without magic forcing it. It doesn't work like that. The Shadow Wolf's voice was heavy with ancient grief. I know, I've watched the goddess try to love me again for centuries. And the betrayal carved too deep. Once the bond breaks, once the magic is gone, so is the bridge that connected you. He limped closer. You'll look at each other and feel nothing. Maybe less than nothing. I don't believe that. But Thorn's voice wavered, because he could feel it already. The bond preparing to sever, like a rope fraying strand by strand, each moment bringing them closer to the inevitable snap. Vesper pressed her forehead to his. I need you to promise me something. Anything. When this is over, when you don't remember why I matter, her voice cracked. Don't try to understand. Don't torture yourself wondering why there's a hollow space where something used to be. Just live. Rule your pack. Find happiness, even if it's not with me. I can't promise that. You have to. She kissed him. Soft, devastating, final. Because I need to know that this meant something. That saving everyone didn't destroy you in the process. The goddess watched their goodbye with tears streaming down her divine face. Behind her, the Shadow Wolf's expression was unreadable, but his eyes, those ancient silver eyes, held something that looked like envy. We should begin, he said quietly. Dawn is coming. And if we wait much longer, I won't have the strength to complete the transition. Vesper pulled away from Thorn, though her hand lingered in his for one last moment. Where's the heart? In my father's vault. Thorn's voice was hollow. I'll take you to it. No. The goddess stepped forward. You've already given enough. This part I do alone, to honor what should have been done 3 centuries ago. She raised her hand and reality bent. The stone beneath their feet rippled like water, and suddenly they were no longer in the forest, but standing in a chamber Thorn recognized. His father's private vault, deep beneath the Alpha's den. And there, not in a separate case, but at the throne's base, silver had been melted and reformed around a crystal core. The heart imprisoned within metal for 3 centuries. Thorn's father hadn't just hidden it, he'd made it the foundation of Alpha power itself. Every time an Alpha sat in judgment, they literally sat upon a god's stolen heart. The goddess lifted it with shaking hands, the silver peeling away at her touch. Are you certain? She asked Vesper. Once this is done, there is no reversing it, no going back. Vesper looked at Thorn one last time. He was crying. This Alpha King who'd never shown weakness, who'd ruled with iron control, was openly weeping, and she knew she was breaking him. But sometimes love meant breaking so others could heal. I'm certain, she whispered. The goddess pressed the heart to Vesper's chest. The world exploded into silver light. Thorn felt the mate bond scream, a sound that transcended hearing, that vibrated through every cell of his body. It was being torn apart, severed at the root, and the pain was indescribable. He tried to hold on to it, onto her, onto the feeling of rightness that had consumed him since the moment they touched. But it slipped through his fingers like water, like smoke, like a dream upon waking. When the light faded, Vesper stood in the center of the chamber, alive, whole. Her eyes were no longer silver but a deep shifting gray, mortal and divine, human and wolf, herself and something more. She looked at Thorn, and he saw the exact moment the bond finished breaking, because she looked at him like he was a stranger. Not with hatred, not with indifference, with polite confusion, like someone trying to remember why they'd walked into a room. She started, then stopped. I'm sorry, I don't. Who are you? 4 words, simple, innocent, devastating. Thorn opened his mouth, but no sound came out. How did he answer that? I'm your mate. I'm the man you saved. I'm the one you chose to sacrifice everything for. Except he wasn't. Not anymore. The goddess's hand landed gently on his shoulder. The transition is complete. She carries him willingly now. They're one being, separate but unified. She gestured, and Thorn saw it. The invisible chains that had bound the Shadow Wolf for 3 centuries were dissolving, turning to silver dust that drifted away on a wind that didn't exist. He's free. Vesper, or whatever she was, now tilted her head, studying Thorn with that unnerving gray gaze. "You're the Alpha King. I've seen you before." From a distance, her brow furrowed. "Why does it feel like I should know you better than I do?" "Because you loved me," Thorn wanted to scream. "Because we were everything to each other." But the words stuck in his throat. Behind them, Silas stirred, still pinned by the goddess's power. "Your grace." His voice was weak but determined. "I don't understand. You've given an abomination what it wanted. How does this protect the pack, protect our world?" The goddess turned and the temperature dropped 20 degrees. "You dare question me? You who twisted my grief into a torture device, who perpetuated suffering in my name. We were protecting lies." Her voice cracked like thunder. "You were protecting your own power, your control. The Beta Line has used the vessel curse to manipulate Alpha Kings for centuries. Keep them focused on external threats while you consolidated influence. Made yourselves indispensable." Silas's face went white. "Did you think I didn't notice, that I didn't watch as you poisoned pack after pack and with paranoia and false prophecies?" She leaned closer. "You told Thorn's father that his son would be weak, controlled by a mate bond, that he should fear the vessel's arrival. You orchestrated this entire conflict." "No," Thorn breathed, but the pieces were clicking into place. His father's paranoia, the way Silas had always been there, whispering warnings, stoking fears. "You wanted me dead, wanted to take the throne. I wanted to save the pack." Silas snarled, his mask finally dropping completely. "You're soft, Thorn, weak. You care more about individual wolves than the strength of the whole. Under your rule, we've become vulnerable, divided. Under my rule, we've become a family." Thorn's voice was quiet but sharp as a blade. "Not a machine. Sentiment doesn't win wars. No, but it wins loyalty." Thorn looked around at the assembled wolves. Council members, enforcers, packmates who'd known him his entire life. "How many of you actually want me dead? How many of you believe Silas's lies about strength and sacrifice?" Silence. Then slowly wolves began to lower their eyes, to back away from Silas. Even some of his own enforcers stepped aside, their expressions conflicted. "Traitors," Silas spat. "All of you, you're choosing comfort over survival." "We're choosing truth over fear," one of the council members said. An older wolf, Elder Morrison, someone Thorn had respected his entire life. "We've been living in lies long enough." A new voice cut through the tension, deep, ancient, layered with both Vesper's tone and something infinitely older. "Enough." Vesper, or the being she'd become, stepped forward. When she moved, it was with a grace that transcended mortal limitations. The Shadow Wolf's power merged with her human form, creating something entirely new. "You speak of survival," she said, and her voice harmonized with itself. "Mortal and divine. But you know nothing of it. I have surveyed 300 years of fragmentation, of torture, of being used as a weapon against my will." Her eyes locked on Silas, and she survived 15 years of silence, of rejection, of being told her only purpose was to suffer and die. The Shadow Wolf's power rippled beneath her skin, not threatening, but undeniable. "We are done being weapons, done being tools, done being cages." She turned to the moon goddess. "What would you have us do?" The goddess smiled, sad and proud in equal measure. "What you've always deserved. Choose your own path. You are no longer bound by my mistakes or anyone else's expectations. You are free. Then I choose to stay." Vesper's voice was firm. "This pack may have hurt me, but it also sheltered me, fed me, kept me alive when they didn't understand why." She looked at Thorn, and though there was no recognition of their bond, there was something else: respect, curiosity. And I think there's something worth protecting here." Thorn's chest tightened. She didn't remember him, didn't remember their love, but she was still choosing to fight for his pack, for his people, still choosing him, just in a different way. "What about him?" One of the council members pointed at Silas. "He's committed treason, attempted murder, conspiracy." Thorn looked at his former beta. This man he'd trusted for 20 years, who'd betrayed him in the most fundamental way possible. By rights, he should execute him. Make an example. Prove his strength. But he was so tired of proving strength through violence. And he'd seen something in Silas's eyes during that speech. Not just ambition, genuine belief. Misguided, but genuine. Exile, Thorne said quietly. You have until sunrise to leave Pact territory. If you ever return, if you ever threaten my people again, there will be no mercy, no trial, just death. Silas stood slowly clutching his wounded shoulder where Kate had shot him. For a moment his mask slipped entirely. No calculation, no ambition, just exhaustion. My father died hating himself for what he'd done, Silas said quietly. I thought if I finished his mission, kept the vessel contained, prevented the catastrophe he feared, I thought it would mean his guilt wasn't for nothing. He looked at Vesper. I'm sorry for what my father did, for what I tried to do. I genuinely believed I was saving everyone. Vesper met his eyes. The road to atrocity is paved with good intentions, Silas. Now you get to choose, die believing the lie or live learning the truth. Silas nodded once. Then he turned and walked into the forest, not vanishing by magic but leaving on his own feet. A broken man seeking redemption in exile. Vesper sagged slightly and Thorne instinctively moved to support her. But she steadied herself. He's right. This is a new beginning. She looked at the assembled pack. For all of us. The goddess began to fade, her divine presence retreating. But before she disappeared completely, she looked at Thorne. And in her ancient eyes, he saw understanding, sympathy. What you lost was real, she said softly, her voice for him alone. What you feel now, that hollow ache, is the ghost of a bond that transcended everything. I cannot give it back. Her voice dropped to a whisper. But I can tell you this, love that strong doesn't simply vanish. It transforms. Into what? Thorne whispered. That young alpha is for you to discover. She vanished. The forest fell silent. Dawn was breaking on the horizon, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. Vesper approached Thorne slowly, carefully, like approaching a skittish animal. I don't remember you, she said softly, but I remember feeling something important, something. She touched her chest right over her heart, something that left a mark even magic couldn't fully erase. Thorne's breath caught. I don't know if that means anything, she continued, or if it's just the shadowed wolf's memories bleeding into mine. But, she offered her hand, maybe we could start over. I'd like to know the alpha who chose exile for his enemy instead of execution. Who's willing to question centuries of tradition? Who, she paused, a small smile tugging at her lips, who apparently means something to me even if I can't remember why. Thorne stared at her outstretched palm. This wasn't the mate bond. Wasn't destiny or magic or fate forcing them together. It was just a choice, her choice, his choice. Maybe that was better. Maybe that was real. He took her hand, and for the first time since the bond broke, he felt something other than emptiness. Hope. 3 months passed. The pack had changed under their joint leadership. Thorne as Alphaking, Vesper as his chosen partner. Not Luna, not yet. She'd insisted on earning that title rather than inheriting it through a mate bond that no longer existed. But his equal in all the ways that counted. Together they'd rebuilt what Silas's lies had fractured, created new laws, new traditions, a pack that valued compassion alongside strength. And every day Thorne watched Vesper, the way she argued with council members, fierce and uncompromising when she believed she was right, the way she trained with younger wolves, patient and encouraging, the way she laughed, rare but genuine, when someone made a particularly terrible joke. She was brilliant, frustrating, incredible, and he was falling for her, again. Or maybe for the first time, without magic forcing it, without destiny pulling strings, just him, just her, just the choice to show up every day and try. One afternoon, 2 months in, Thorne found himself in the council chamber with Vesper reviewing pack finances, mundane, boring, necessary. Your accounting methods are creative, Vesper said, pointing at a ledger entry with barely suppressed amusement. Creative is a generous term, Thorne defended. I prefer resourceful. You moved funds between 3 different accounts to make it look like we had budget for the new training facility. And it worked, didn't it? She leaned closer to examine the entry, and Thorne caught her scent. Wild roses and winter frost. The hollow ache in his chest, the one that had been his constant companion for months, suddenly felt less sharp. "You're brilliant," he said without thinking. She looked up, surprised. "At catching accounting fraud. At everything." The words hung between them. Vesper's gray eyes shifting between colors mortal and something more studied his face. "Thorn, I—" But whatever she was going to say was interrupted by a commotion outside. A hunting party returning. Someone had been injured. They both rushed out to help. The moment passed, but Thorn remembered it. 4 months in, they went on a pack hunt together. Vesper shifted fully for the first time since the symbiosis with the shadow wolf. Her wolf form was magnificent. Silver-gray fur eyes that shifted between colors larger than a typical omega, but graceful in ways that took Thorn's breath away. They ran side by side through the forest. When they brought down an elk together, moving in perfect coordination without a word spoken, Thorn realized they'd learned each other's rhythms without magic forcing it. That night, sitting by the fire, Vesper had laughed at one of his terrible puns. "That was awful," she said, still smiling. "I have a reputation to maintain. For bad jokes. For making you smile." She looked at him, then really looked at him, and something shifted in her expression. "You do that a lot," she said softly. "Make me smile. Make me feel, I don't know, lighter." "Good," Thorn said. "You deserve to feel light." 5 months in late evening, they were alone in his study, going over patrol schedules, discussing border treaties. Normal, routine. Vesper made a joke about his tendency to overplan. He'd defended his methods. She'd leaned closer to point at the map. He'd caught that scent again, roses and frost, and without thinking turned his head. Their lips met. No explosion, no cosmic certainty, just warmth, rightness, choice. When they pulled apart, she'd whispered, "I've wanted to do that for weeks." "Why didn't you?" "I wanted to be sure it was real, not an echo of something I can't remember." And Tanes, she kissed him again. "It's real." 6 months after the bond broke, the pack held a small ceremony. Not a traditional mate bonding, not a grand political spectacle, just Thorn and Vesper standing before the moon goddess's shrine surrounded by the people who mattered most. Elder Morrison officiated, his voice steady and warm. "We gather not to witness a mate bond. That gift has already been given and sacrificed for a greater good. We gather to witness something rarer. A bond forged not by the goddess, but by choice. By two souls who chose each other freely, knowing full well the cost." Vesper's hand trembled in Thorn's. "Ready," he whispered. "Terrified," she admitted, "but in a good way." The vows were simple. "I choose you," Thorn said, "not because magic demands it, not because destiny wrote our names together, but because in the past 6 months I've learned who you are, and I want to spend the rest of my life continuing to learn. Choosing you. Every day." Vesper's voice was steady despite the tears. "I choose you. Even though I don't remember what we had before, I know what we're building now is real. Built on honesty and effort and the decision to show up even when it's hard. I choose you, Thorn Blackwater. Today and every day after." When Morrison pronounced them bonded by choice rather than fate, the pack howled their approval. The sound echoed through the forest, carrying joy and hope and new beginnings. That night, tangled in each other, Vesper felt a familiar presence. Not intrusive, just there. "He's content," she murmured against Thorn's chest. "The shadow wolf. He's at peace for the first time in 300 years. "Good," Thorn said, stroking her hair. "He deserves it." "So do we." "Yes, we do." Silence for a moment. Then Vesper propped herself up on one elbow. "Do you ever wonder about what we had before?" "Every day," Thorn admitted. "But then I think, would I trade what we have now to get those memories back? And the answer is no. No, because this is ours. We built it. We chose it. No magic. No shortcuts. Just us." She smiled. "Just us." In the celestial realm, the moon goddess and Shadow Wolf sat in silence. They'd been sitting like this more often lately, not speaking, just existing together. "I should have questioned the other gods," she said finally. "Should have investigated before I acted." "You should have trusted me," he replied. No anger, just fact. "I know." Silence stretched. 300 years, he said softly. I've had nothing but time to think. And I realized something. I was arrogant too. I assumed you would automatically believe me over them because we were mates. I didn't fight hard enough to prove my innocence. I gave up. The goddess looked at him, Dad. Are you, are you apologizing to me? I'm acknowledging my part. We both failed each other. She took his hand, carefully, like touching something precious and fragile. Can we try again? Not as we were, that's dead, but as we are now, wounded, wiser, willing to fail and try again. He squeezed her hand, one day at a time, like them. Like them, she agreed. And far below in the mortal realm, two other souls did the same. 1 year after the mate bond broke, the pack had grown and changed in ways no one could have predicted. Decker Iron's body had been found in the silver-burned forest left to bleed out by Silas's orders. The pack held a funeral not for a hero, but as a reminder. A cautionary tale about blind loyalty. Cade Crane had sought out Vesper 3 months after everything ended. I need to say something, he'd started, voice rough with shame. They were in the training yard. Early morning. Few witnesses. I attacked your mate. I sided with Silas because I was too much of a coward to question orders. And I know saying sorry doesn't... You shot him, Vesper interrupted. When it mattered most, you chose right. That's what I'll remember. Cade's throat worked. The new oversight guard, you recommended me to lead it. You've spent months proving you meant that shot. Keep proving it. She'd offered her hand. He'd taken it, tears in his eyes. Every day, I swear it. Now, a year later, the oversight guard was thriving. A system to prevent the kind of beta manipulation that had corrupted the pack for generations. Accountability, transparency, truth. Silas had sent a single letter from exile 6 months in. Short, direct. I'm working with the Glacier Ridge Pack to identify other vessel descendants, offering protection instead of imprisonment. It's not redemption, but maybe it's a start. Thorn had read it to Vesper. She'd nodded. Good, that's good. And that had been enough. The bonding ceremony 1 year after they'd first met in that silver-burned forest was attended by wolves from 6 territories. Not because Thorn was Alphaking, because the story had spread. The story of a vessel who chose sacrifice over safety. An alpha who chose compassion over cruelty. A love that survived even when magic said it shouldn't. After the ceremony, after the pack had celebrated and dispersed, Thorn and Vesper stood alone at the forest's edge, the same spot where she'd first saved him. Do you ever regret it, Thorn asked, giving up the mate bond? Do you? I asked first. She was quiet for a moment. Then, sometimes I wonder what it felt like. That certainty, that magic. She turned to face him. But then I look at you and I think I chose this. I choose this. Every morning when I wake up next to you, every time we argue about patrol schedules, every time you make those terrible puns and I laugh anyway. She touched his face. This is better, because it's real. It's real, he agreed. They kissed as the sun set, painting the sky in gold and crimson. And somewhere in the celestial realm, 2 gods watched. They did it, the goddess whispered, what we couldn't. They chose each other freely, the shadow wolf agreed, without the poison of doubt, without goods whispering lies. A long pause. Do you think we could try again? The goddess asked. Not with magic, just us. The shadow wolf looked at her, really looked at her. 300 years of pain and love and betrayal between them. One day at a time, he said finally. No guarantees, no certainties, just the choice to try. She smiled, a real smile, the first in 3 centuries. One day at a time. She took his hand, and they began. Not where they'd ended, not even where they'd started, but somewhere new, built on choice, on effort, on the decision to show up and try even when it was hard, just like the mortals they'd inadvertently taught. And in the mortal realm, Thorn and Vesper began their next chapter, every single day choosing each other, every single day proving that the strongest bonds are the ones we forge ourselves. No magic required, just love, real chosen human love, and that was worth everything.